Hello.
Hey, Simon.
Hey, Simon, it's Skylar. How you doing?
Simon.
Hello, Simon.
What's up, Simon?
Hello.
How you doing?
Hey.
Hello.
Hey,
Simon.
Hello, Simon.
Welcome to part 2 of my conversation with Japanese-Korean storyteller Alton Chung. If you missed part 1, I highly recommend that you have a listen. Alton goes into history and the collecting of those tales. In this episode, we talk about healing and story, ghost tales, collecting stories and structure. Welcome back.
I got a question for you. So most of the interviews that I have with people on Conversations with Storytellers are people who tell folk and fairy tales, because I think that folk and fairy tales are really, really important. And you've kind of touched on some of that already. But what's important to you about folk and fairy tales? What's the magic behind those, do you think?
Folk and fairy tales have been around for many years, maybe perhaps a couple hundred years. And they've been told, they've been retold, and, the stories get polished with each telling. So they're reduced to their essence. And they have existed, they have survived this long because they touch upon some kind of universal theme of human existence. They address some kind of need or some kind of thing that just kind of we need to hear. And they, again, show us how to behave, what to be aware of, what we would consider dangerous, and instill upon us, how to live. They can address difficult issues within society in a non-threatening way.
Yeah.
You can get your point across.
Yes.
There's words coming out of an animal's mouth. You can accept, whereas the same words coming out of a human's mouth, you go, no.
Yeah.
But a way of addressing and accessing that information that allows us to realize, this is the way you should behave. Here's an example of things that are dangerous. Here's an example of things that you should consider as you lead your life. And so those they are ways of the guide rails, I guess, of our civilization that transcend culture, that transcend ethnicity. These are ways of how to be human. Yeah.
I like that a lot. I was reading an article by Jonathan Gottschall, and he was talking about Robin Dunbar as well, and an anthropologist, Daniel Smith, and some of his colleagues. And they were talking about how there's this connection that we have with storytelling, that, so when you're reading a book, right, you're caught in the moment, but it's an individual experience between you and that writer in that moment, right? We're watching the TV, you're having this connection with the TV and not necessarily the people around you. The theater, it's with the stage and the actors and maybe some of the audience around you in a similar way to the cinema. You get caught up in that group feeling of euphoria or fear or whatever's going on in the story. But with storytelling, it's very much a communal and community thing, when it's not 2021, right? 2020. And when we're all in a group together and we're all telling a story, and we feel that connection with each other a lot more strongly, I think. And this is what one of the things that Gottschall was saying, is that it's something that we're transported together as a group, as a community. And I think that's something that can be said, I think, for folk and fairy tales as well, that doesn't always necessarily work with personal narrative. I think personal narrative touches on us in a way that's similar to reading a book, because if it's something that person who's doing personal narrative, it's an individual experience that you can identify with, right? Whereas I think with folk and fairy tales, it's a much broader, you're not having, because it's a folk and fairy tale, you can't have that exact same experience because you're not a lion or a monkey, or you're not in a world that's inhabited by dragons and unicorns, right? So there's that one step removed that you have, but yet there's that connection that you have with the incident, the issue at hand, as it were, in the story. Do you think that? Do you think that's also true, or do you think I'm just?
You're full of hot air. No, no. No, I'd say there's some truth in that, but I'd take it a little. I'd go back to my original premise in that personal narratives are stories, and I believe that storytelling. You don't have that fourth wall as you would in theater or movies or television. It's much more intimate in that respect, and more direct. Now, personal narrative versus folk and fairy tales. I think they both, as an audience member, you hear both, and both can allow you to transport your ways. But I'd say that a personal narrative is personal. I mean, it may strike people who have that same resonance at different levels. If you're depending upon your life experience, if you had a very similar life experience, you can resonate very strongly with that. If you have a different life experience, you may not resonate as strongly with that, but you may feel, the emotion certainly. Right. A folk and fairy tale has the advantage of having a lot of the extraneous details stripped away and getting down to that, like in that polishing, to that deeper, universal human need. And that I think that because it's been told for so long, because it addresses some basic human wounding that needs to be healed or needs to be heard, that it has a wider appeal. It can strike more people. More people can resonate with that because of the universality of it, as opposed to a personal narrative, which may strike some people very strongly, but others not so much. And I think that's the difference. I think both of them work. Both of them transport people. It's just that because the folk and fairy tales have been told so many times, and a lot of that it's been polished, it's smooth, and it sinks down to that, and it resonates at a much deeper level that can strike many more people in a more general way.
Yeah, I like that. So, what's your process when you go to learn a story? How do you do that?
When I go to learn a story?
Because everyone does it a little bit differently, and I'm always interested in finding out how folks do that.
Okay. When looking for new stories, I read a lot. I listen to a lot. I read a lot. And some stories just kind of go in one ear, out the other, and some I couldn't tell you what's going on. But I've learned to pay attention to stories that won't let me go. I read a story, and a day or two later it comes back. Oh, that story, it's still there. Oh, that's interesting. I pay attention to that. Or when I'm reading a story, and all of a sudden I start hearing the voices of the characters in my head, like, oh, yeah, why is this character speaking? I'm reading this line, I can hear this character's squeaky little voice. Oh, that's interesting. Or when those things happen, I pay attention. I think there's something here for me, and okay, I realize, okay, this is a story. I want to work on this story. So I type it out exactly as I found it. That's my original piece. And then I start looking for as many other sources, other versions of the story, if it's a folktale, whatever it is, or if it's a historic story. I try to find as much as I can about the details, the context in which the story is found, what was going on at the time, who are these people involved, are there other versions of the stories? Did this actually happen? If it's a real story, did it actually happen, or is someone making this up? I need to understand, what am I getting into here? And but more to the point, I pay attention to. I try to find out what is it about this story that resonates with me. What unhealed part of me is longing to hear this story? And I need to understand my connection to the story, as that's going to give me insight as to what I need to heal in myself and how I need to tell the story. And that allows me to go and formulate what gift it is I want to give to the audience. This story has affected me in some way. I need to be able to tell it. What's going on with me? Oh, this is the part of me that, that hurt or got shunned or got shut away or whatever it is. And I need to look at that. I need to look at that so I can be able to go and bring all those emotions up to the surface and hold it there for the audience to have their own experience and not break down myself. If I haven't done that, I haven't done the personal process work on myself to go and allow that to happen. Because as soon as if I ever break down on stage, that's it. Everyone immediately comes out of storytelling mode. They go into caretaking mode, and they're worried about me, and they're not in the story. I'm not in service of the story. For me, storytelling is always about being in service to the story and making it the best it can possibly be. I'm simply the conduit through which the story comes through.
That's really cool. So one thing that you also mentioned on your website is that you went to the Barbara Brennan Healing School. Is that correct? Right.
Yes.
She's the woman that wrote the book Hands of Light, which I think a lot of people of our generation have owned at some point or another. Do so you talked a lot about healing just then, and about how that story has touched something upon you that needs healing, which I find immensely fascinating. I don't always feel it. I always feel that a story resonates with me, but it's not necessarily something that I figure about, that there's the healing process. Do you think the work that you did at that school has brought to your mind more of the healing of a story and the healing of yourself through your work?
Oh, certainly. That's exactly. I mean, that was, again, another tool in my tool chest. Yeah.
Right.
It was, I learned about. You too can spend a lifetime and have your own tool chest. Hey. Other aspects of myself, like I said, I was introduced to personal process work through that. I learned about connecting to other people, being present, and these are all things that, as storytellers, we either develop, it consciously, or have an intuitive feel unconsciously of this is what we need. How do we need to be? We need to be present. We need to be with the audience and focused, and not thinking about what I'm going to have for dinner.
Right. Yeah.
So these are part and parcel of all those things, and I think my work with the school and was actually one another of these pieces that allowed me to go on my storytelling journey. We had to do an art project, and one of the art projects I wanted to do was go and tell a story. I mean, people could tell them I'm a storyteller. What do I want to do? So I sat there and they said, okay, come up on stage and tell your story to the class. I did. And they said, okay, this is what you're doing energetically. We can see this, how you behave. Now, try it this way. Try and actually opening yourself up and connecting to everyone in the audience. Just stand there and do that, and then tell your story. And all of a sudden, when I did that, I told the same story again. Everyone was hanging on every single word. And I realized, this is magic. And it's as simple as being present. And I imagine as if when I'm telling a story to an audience, I'm kindling a little fire in each individual person. I look at that person, kindle a little fire. Look at that person, kindle a little fire. It's connecting to the person. I can have a sea of people out there, and I'm trying my best to connect to them and hold the space for them to have their own experience. So it's just another way of framing what we do as storytellers. And it gave me a framework in which to think and how to behave and how to conduct myself when I'm on stage. So yes, I think my work at the Brennan School helped me personally. It really expanded my worldview, changed my perspectives a lot, brought more awareness to, who I am and what I need to be doing. And that, I do have wounds, I do have issues, and there's something I can do about it. I can actually heal myself. So part of my, I fervently believe that storytelling is my healership. It is how I am able to go and, again, let's going back to what I originally said. finding a story, finding my connection to that story. What is it that I can bring to the story? How do I need to tell this story? Because, this is my perspective, and providing that gift to the audience to allow them, as I'm telling the story, to have their own experience about, everyone has their own life experiences, and stories affect people differently. And I can tell the same story to a group of 50 people, and 50 people have different experiences, but it's their experience. Right. It's not for me to decide what's right or what's wrong. It's their experience. And I'm simply allowing them the opportunity to take a look at what might be going on for them. I'm not there to go and fix anyone or do anything. I'm simply giving people an awareness of, hey, this affected me this way. What's going on with you? You might want to take a look at that.
I really like what you said about holding a space for people. What do you think's important to you for the audience in regards to that whole healing of stories?
Well, I think stories can be very healing. And, as a storyteller, you can only take people as far as you have gone yourself, right? So, for me, it's when I tell stories that affect me, there are little hints telling me that, hey, this is part of yourself you need to look at, or here's something that you haven't looked at, you probably should look at. So for me, that's my own little healing journey that I have to go and investigate myself. Why am I having this reaction to this story? What's going on with me? So I'd be curious about that. And in finding my own way to find out why am I resonating with this particular story that caused me to look at parts of myself, part of my own history, things that I have not wanted to look at, that I need to look at in order to go and really understand what this story is telling me. Mm-hmm. And once I've gone through that personal process work and I've gone on my own journey, then I have a new perspective as to what this story is really about for me. Why am I resonating with that? And I can tell the story from that perspective with that in mind. And when I go in front of an audience and I bring all of myself to that story, to them, and I've done my personal process work so that I can bring all those emotions right up to this and hold them for the audience, and hold them so they can have their own experience about whatever the story is for them. And then I can, if I can immediately switch and go into another character or change scenes and not break down, that tells me that I have done my personal process work and I'm doing it in a good way. My goal in telling these types of stories that resonate with me at a deeper level is not so much I'm going to heal everyone. It's more I'm bringing attention. I'm giving them an opportunity to look at something that, hey, if this resonates with you in this particular way, you might want to take a look at perhaps, be curious about why you're having this reaction to the story or something like that. So it's more of a bringing awareness. Here's the situation. Here's an awareness. If you're feeling the emotion, you're feeling triggered by this, be curious as to why. It's not so much that I'm going to be, healing anyone. It's more just bringing awareness to things, and for them to invite them to embark upon their own journey of healing. That's the way I can look at it.
Yeah, that's so cool. So what lights up your eyes when you as a storyteller, not just when you're performing, but the whole process of work?
For me, I love research. I'm one of those weird, geeky, nerdy people who really enjoys that hunt, that detective work. So, if I come across a story that somehow resonates with me, that tells me, hey, tell me, that I start hearing the voices of the characters as I'm reading the script or reading the story, then it's a cute clue to me that, hey, this story is, it's important. Pay attention. Or if I'm having a reaction to the story and the story keeps coming up, it doesn't leave me alone. Again, that's another little clue to me saying, hey, pay attention. Something's here for you. And so, okay, I've got a story. It might be a fragment of a story. It might be something that triggers a memory for me. And then I say, okay, this is a story that is demanding my attention. It needs attention. It wants to be told. I need to investigate more. I start finding other versions of the story. If it's a folk tale or if it's a historic story, then I start doing research. What was the situation? What is the context of this story? Is this story true? Are there other accounts of this story? And what are the biases in the version that I'm looking at here?
Right.
And then start really digging into it and saying, if it actually happened, are there newspaper accounts of this event? I can dig into newspaper archives and take a peek and see what kind of news articles are written about this incident at this time. Are there photographs or anything like that? Just being a real detective and digging through all the records and finding out what actually happened here. Because you get a story, and of course, if it's written from a certain person's point of view, then it may, the truth lies somewhere in between. Especially if you've got two versions of the story that kind of contradict each other, or else, if. So it's a matter of winnowing through the facts of the story and getting to the truth of the story. What actually happened? What was kind of embellished afterwards, or what is probably not likely to have occurred that way because of the facts of the situation. Okay, so once I've gotten all that, I've done my research. It's a matter of saying, okay, now let's look at the story. Let's take a look at the story structure. How do we want to tell the story? What is the sequence of events? Where's the real conflict of the story? What is the question that needs to be answered? And making sure that I get that up front. Saying, hey, this is the reason why the story is important. This is the question the burning question that keeps you wanting to ask why. What happened next? What happened next? Once I've identified that for myself, and it's like, okay, I've got that. Now, what are the newspaper, please? The who, what, where, why, when. All those questions need to be put in the front part. That's all in that beginning part of the story. And then as the story develops, you want to talk about more about how, how are things progress? How do things get developed? How do they get worse? How does the situation get worse and worse and worse? And when you think it can get any worse, how does it get even worse? And then how is the story resolved? What happens? How is the question answered? And what happened to these people afterwards? Simple, basic story structure. Because you say you want to pull you through that whole story. And if it's a story about the hero's journey, then you want to make sure that all those facets of the hero's journey are in there. You go from the real to the unreal. You go down into the belly of the beast. You come out the other side, and you vanquish the monster. You've collected the treasure. You've accomplished the task, whatever it is, and then you come out the other end. And how have you changed? What have you learned? And what gifts do you bring to the audience? That whole journey.
Wow.
To me, those are all the pieces. When you're creating a story, those are all the pieces that kind of need to be there that can help you, give you clues as to, again, from your perspective, why is the story important to you? Tell it from that perspective and look at all these things. And okay, now you've got this story. It's a mess. It's a huge thing. And now it begins the part of the storyteller where you say, okay, I've got a lot of words here. How can I winnow out all those words to the critical few? Because I've got a finite amount of time. I've got to get the images out there. I've got to move the story along. There's all these really cool little side detail trips that I don't have time for. I can't put that in the story because I only got this much time. But it's a really cool little thing because as a researcher, you love all the details, but you can't have it all details. You need to know that as a storyteller, this is what's behind the door. This is what's down the hallway that you don't go down. You know that, but as a storyteller, as a story, what is the critical path? The critical few that you need to have in there so you can move the story along and get to the end. That's the way I look at it.
Right. No, but it brings up an interesting point though, because there are some stories that one finds and you can get to that diamond, if you will. Mm-hmm. But when you start telling that story, there are those other things that you might want to put in. So are there some stories that you have different versions of where you have more of the peripheral stuff in because it just makes it a juicier story and then a shorter story for when you have time limitations maybe?
Definitely, especially the longer pieces that I've created, especially the historic stories. You've got the full-blown 40-minute piece that you probably never tell because there's so many details inside of it. And then, you've got that, you went, okay, now what are the, all these details. Okay, what is the important stuff here? What is the, and again, who is your audience? Is it you're telling it to grown-ups? Are you telling it to teenagers? Or telling it to kids? Because each of those has different things you got to add in or things you got to leave out. I tell this one story about the Chinese immigration in the United States, Pacific Northwest specifically. It's called I call it Coming to Gold Mountain or Letter from Gold Mountain. The full-blown piece, 40 minutes, but a lot of details and stuff that you can get lost in, a lot of statistics. So you condense it down, saying, okay, there's a 20-minute version, which is the version I normally tell because I aim it at the adult audiences, for grown-ups. Mm-hmm. And then there's the 8-minute version, which is I cut everything down to the critical few. This is the essential piece, the essential question and the essential facts that you need to know for this story. Just boom, here's the story. Da, 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 da. And then, of that same story, I've got, the version for the fourth graders. Right. Totally different perspective, different narrator. The first one is an old man, and he's writing a letter home. And you're reading his letter. Fourth grade version, no. I'm a historical detective, and I'm here all the clues that I found, and here's the story that I've been able to piece together by doing the research. Again, different perspective, looking at the same facts, telling it in different ways. Same story. But, again, who do you tell these things to? And again, you balance it with the audience and with the needs of the audience, how much, what are they interested in? So again.
Yes. So when you're doing research for some of these stories, one of the words that jumped out at me was, there are certain biases in the versions of the tales, right? And
sure.
Some of that is cultural. Some of that is, from a particular time period, because that's how people thought back in those days or acted back in those days. How many stories have you found where the lens is completely skewed on certain versions and you've had to really dig a lot deeper to find, the real truth of the matter?
I would say that, just about any historic story, you're going to run into that.
Okay.
Because, especially, I do a lot of World War II stories and, history is written by the victors. Yeah. And so, a lot of it is told from the perspective of the winners. Right. Or else another case of the story I created about, I call it Chile Not, the Fritz Finken story. It's a story that when I first found it, it was his version that he had written down in 1964. And then I think Hallmark made a movie out of it. And so you'll see this really romanticized version all over the web about this story. And I needed to get down to the facts. And I needed to figure out what is true, what is not. What kinds of, would this person have really said this at that time or not? And luckily, I was able to find an actual interview with this guy because he went on Unsolved Mysteries because he was trying to find these 7 soldiers who, met during the Battle of the Bulge at their hunting cabin in the middle of the Ardennes forest, and on Christmas Eve, and how it was a peaceful time, and how they were at truce, through Christmas Day. Then they all shook hands and they went their separate ways as friends. And he was trying to locate these men years later. And I was able to find an interview with this man, Fritz Finken, before he passed away in 2001. And how he was eventually reunited with one of those soldiers years later. But from his perspective, from his words, from what he recalled, just him talking, I was able to kind of, okay, that's real. I can feel that the authenticity of what he's saying, and a lot of this other stuff that, from other people's perspective, other versions of the story I've read, maybe not so much. I can't substantiate that. I'm not going to leave it out. And so this is an editorial thing as a storyteller, especially historic stories, when you have differing opinions, lots of times I find myself saying, well, some people say this and some people say that. I don't really know what happened. Here's the outcome. This is what factually I can say actually happened, was the result of this action here. Mm-hmm. And leave it up to the audience to decide whatever version they want to believe. But here's the ramification. Here's the actual facts that actually the result of all this thing that happened, and move on from there. Because it's the story that we're interested in, and the transformation that happens, and how that affects the audience, affects the characters. That's the important thing for me.
Have you ever had someone come up to you at the end of one of these historical performances that you've done, or historical stories that you've told, and given you more information because
yes, definitely. See, that's the thing about historical stories. Unless you experience it, you weren't there, and if you weren't there, guess what? Whatever you got is wrong because you weren't there. When I look upon every historic story I tell as a living document because I don't know everything,
right?
And I've got lots of times, especially when I start telling stories, people come, well, it wasn't exactly like this. This is what actually happened, or that wasn't quite right. Go back and check your facts because this is what people agree actually happened here. I've had that happen a lot. In fact, when I first started out, there's a guy who's one person said, "Give me your script. Let me annotate it for you." And that was great. It was fabulous. And I'm still in contact with this guy. He's a historian. He's a filmmaker. And he says, "Oh no, here. This is kind of what happened here." Because these guys, he's interviewed hundreds of veterans, and he's seen a lot of this stuff. And so he said, "No. This is what I know to be true." Cool. I'm happy with that. Like I said, I'm trying my best to give people the facts as best as I can know them. And like I said, because I wasn't there, I didn't experience it all. It's constantly being changed. And I said, I can't change it in the video, but I can change it when I tell the story. I'll do my best because, once it's frozen, it's frozen. But as I tell the story live, as I tell it, as I continue on my journey, I will make changes and I'll adapt the stories the best I can.
That's got to be such a satisfying experience when you find out more truths or another truth or a slightly different truth. To the one
it's great that that the people who lived it or real authorities on the subject matter saying, didn't quite get it right here, change this, then this is a better fit for what we know. Oh, I love that. It's great because one, they took the time to listen to me. And two, they cared enough to say, you didn't get this right. I want you to make sure you get this right. I love being able to do that. And it makes me feel that, okay, my whole goal in doing a lot of this stuff is to do it in a good way, the best life that I possibly can, to honor the people whose story I'm trying to tell because they're not around to go and tell their story anymore. And it's my responsibility to tell it the best way I can.
That's so cool. You can't have an ego to do this kind of work, I don't think. Well, the sort of work that you're doing anyway.
Well, my attitude is I'm just a storyteller. I'm the conduit. The story is the star, right?
Yeah.
And the way I always look at it is, the story is over here, right? That's the story. And I'm over here. And I want to do everything I possibly can to make the story as best as it possibly can. It's not like this, So you hit the story, hit me. No.
Right.
We always want to make sure the story is the best it can be because the story is a star. I'm just the guy who's just kind of like relaying the story. That's the way I always look at things. Whenever I've asked for feedback, I said, no, tell me because I want to make it the best I can. I don't care about anything else.
So do you get nervous before you go out on the stage and tell a story?
Yeah, definitely. I mean
Is it more so with the historical stories than the folk stories, or is it about the same?
It's anything. when I feel those butterflies, I mean, to me, that's an indication in that I'm where I'm supposed to be. That's nervous energy.
Yes.
And as a storyteller, I've figured out how to take that nervous energy and channel it into performance. When I don't feel that nervous energy, that means something's wrong. I mean, I'm not feeling well. I'm not taking it seriously. Why am I not taking it seriously? What's going on? And before I get on stage, I got to go and adjust my attitude so that I feel that, because that's just stuff I can use in the performance and an indication to me that, I'm taking it seriously. And I'm on the I'm there's no safety net. I'm on the tightrope, but I have confidence in the story, and I just got to go and let that thing fly.
That's so cool. That's so cool. All right. I got a couple of silly questions for you.
I got a lot of silly answers.
I hope so. So, is there a storyteller that you've not met, either living or dead, that you would love to have met or would love to meet?
Many. I didn't really become aware of storytelling really until maybe the late 90s, and I really didn't become a professional storyteller until 2003, and by that time I guess I was just that transition phase where a lot of the older storytellers who were part of that original storytelling movement in the 70s and 80s were going away, and I never met Ray Hicks, and everyone just in that part of the country in Tennessee, they just revered him as one of these guys who just knew stories. He's lived stories. I think Gamble Rogers is another one who I've heard about, but I didn't know. He passed away before I again became aware of what his storytelling was. And people have been tributes to him and things like that.
That's all right.
Jackie Torrance. Jackie Torrance is another one. I had one opportunity to see her, and I had a conflict or something like that. Something wasn't quite right. I couldn't quite make it fit. She came to Nationals. I happened to be at Nationals at the time, and I missed my opportunity to go and listen to her live. And then she passed away shortly thereafter. These luminaries, these people who everyone just revered, that I wish that I had, an opportunity to really sit and listen to them or talk to them and things like that. So a lot of these people, I have lots of, again, not really sure of, that's not aware.
I hear you.
Back and saying, oh, okay.
I feel the same way, because I think we entered around about the same time, and I didn't know about Jackie Torrance until she had passed away, and the same with J.J. Renault.
Yes.
I wanted to meet Sid Lieberman, and then Sid Lieberman passed away, and I was that was just, that gutted me, because I had a couple of conversations with him on the phone about one of his stories, and I was like, I really want to see this guy. I really want to meet this guy. He sounds really cool, and he sounds really nice, and I want to learn from him.
He was really nice. I did have the opportunity to go and interact with him several times and tell with him. And I think the first time I performed at Nationals, Sid was my MC, and he introduced me, and that was like amazing. It's a small community, and it's a very open and loving community. And at the time, when I was first starting out, I was shy and I didn't know who or what, or but I would encourage people to, if they're interested in like these storytellers, go up and talk to them. They're more than willing just to sit there and talk with them, because I think the storytellers are very open and honest, and we love to talk. We love to tell stories. We love stories, and so if people feel the need, do it. Especially because the opportunities, especially now in COVID, to meet someone face to face, pretty hard, pretty rare. It's but an opportunity to see or listen to any of these people, especially the luminaries of the field, we're getting older. It's take the opportunity at all times just to go and just say hi.
Right. And I think one of the things is that probably every single storyteller that does this for a living. We love our craft so much, we're happy to talk about it. And also, people see it up on a stage sometimes, at things like the National Storytelling Festival or Timpanogos or wherever, right? And they think, oh, you're a star. And it's like, not really. We're just like a plumber, but we do what we do up on the stage, right?
That's the way I look at it.
Yeah, right? The plumbers tend to make more money than we do.
Yeah, they do, unfortunately. But you're right. I think storytellers, we all get together. What do? We talk about stories. We talk about crafting stories. And, that's one of the joys I really like is when a bunch of storytellers get together and we talk about, experiences that we've had or stories that we're working on or, how to make things better. And I just love that. I think that's so cool. And I've certainly missed that a lot in these times where, we're all distant.
Yes, that's a true statement. That's a true statement. So what's your favorite breakfast? Where would your favorite place be to eat said breakfast? And who would you eat that breakfast with?
Oh my goodness. This is one of those questions I sat there and stared at and went, I don't know. One of the things I really enjoy, I don't have very often, certainly eggs Benedict with nice strong coffee. I mean, I remember when I was traveling through Paris, the strong French coffee with the cream. You pour both of them at the same time into a cup, and just kind of people watching and fresh baked bread with butter. Oh gosh, yes. So many images are coming to my mind about and they're clashing. Like having high tea, but that's not quite breakfast. But little sandwiches and things like that with salmon and capers and onions. Yes.
You like your food then, by the sound of it.
I love food. I'm a little food junkie. Where would I have that? Gosh. There's so many things that come to my mind. Like sitting in a city to watch people go by, or else just sort of like up on the mountaintops, kind of watching the clouds roll in and watching the animals going graze. I mean, I don't know. So many images are flying through my mind right now.
So what I can see and what the listeners will not be able to see is that Alton's got his eyes closed and he's got a big smile on his face, and I know that he is
salivating.
These different places and different things. It's like not just a smorgasbord of food, but it's a smorgasbord of the world, of where he's traveling. It's like he's on a flying carpet in his mind.
Oh, definitely. I mean, it's so many. When you asked that question, I said, oh, gosh, there's so many places, and things that I remember just traveling. I mean, to me, I love traveling. And that's the reason why when you ask me these questions, where would it be? I have a hard time figuring that out.
Okay.
And that's, it's just a world of experience and beyond, just, our mundane thing, getting up and going out to the coffee shop and, but traveling to different parts of the world, not figuring out, I spent a year wandering around through Europe, and I think that was my year of freedom, and I've always tried to get that back. I mean, I didn't have a lot of money, but I had a lot of time, and I never knew where I was going to be the next day because I had a Eurail pass, and I was just off on an adventure. And
those Euro passes are great, aren't they?
Oh, I loved it, and I studied in Copenhagen Business School, and so I really got to know living in another culture. I lived in Turkey for several months and just kind of wandered all over the place.
Wow.
But it was that freedom of just not knowing where I'm going to be and what I'm going to be doing, and it not really mattered. It's like, look, I remember I was in where was I was in Monaco, and I said, okay, let's go to Nice. I'd never been to Nice before. I said, all right, time to. I eventually have to get up to Brussels. Where's the next one? Dijon. Okay, well, I've never been to Dijon. I know they make mustard there. Let's go there. I get off the night train, and it's like 4 a.m. and it's snowing. I'm saying, I'm not leaving this station. Where's the next train out of here? I said, 7:30 train to Beaune. Beaune. What the heck is that? I look at my little map. Beaune, medieval walled city in the middle of the wine country. we're going to Bone. And it was a great time. I mean, I had a great time wandering through this, town. But I guess that sense of adventure, and it not really mattering, just living there in the moment, to me, I think that's the most important thing. So you asked me about breakfast and where I want to be. Wherever I happen to be at the time, that is the most important time. And whatever I happen to be eating, that's great because it fits right this time, this place. Would it be the same again if I go back? Probably not. But for that moment, that time, for that image and where I am, yes, that's perfect.
Ah, that's I like that answer. Thank you. That's a great answer. And I talking about being present and the traveling and stuff, I when you were saying that, I felt that when I'm telling stories, the folk and fairy tales, I kind of feel that way as well, because you have to be present in the story when you're telling it, but also I feel that I'm traveling within that story and I'm traveling to all these different places, which I think is, it's probably one of the reasons why I like this craft so much, this art so much, this whole nonsense called storytelling that we do.
Go on an intergalactic trip in your office.
Yeah, right, in your own little brain, in my own lunchbox. Well, Alton, thank you so much indeed for your time. I greatly appreciate it. And I hope that it's sooner rather than later that we might be able to get together for a breakfast somewhere out there in person. That would be freaking awesome.
That would be awesome. Like I said, I think, hopefully, things will begin to subside eventually. I'm not sure, but, I'd love to be able to go back and go back to traveling again and meeting people face to face instead of, in this little tiny electronic box.
Yeah.
But, and again, as you mentioned, when you're on stage and as a storyteller, being present is one of the gifts that the storyteller can bring. You're not worried about what you're having for dinner, what you can do with your laundry. You're there, you're present, you're on stage, you're in the story. And yes, you're reacting to what's in that story, you're reacting to that audience. And I think people can feel that difference when you're 100% present, because most of the time we're not. We're thinking about things in the past. We're thinking about things in the future. And, if you can get 5 minutes a day with someone who's just 100% present with you in that moment for that time, I would consider yourself extremely lucky. And I think people can sense that. I know kids can. In that they want, they don't know what it is, they can't name it, but they want more of it. Yeah. And I've seen that and I've felt that. And I think that's one of the true gifts a storyteller can bring to their audience is the gift of their time and their presence.
Oh, amen to that. And thank you so much for participating in Conversation with Storytellers. A massive thank you. Really
my pleasure.
Appreciate it. And I hope we get to see each other soon in person.
Oh, looking forward to it. Yep. Breakfast of Champions. That should be awesome.
Take care, mate. Thanks.
Thank you much.
I loved my chat with Alton, and I hope you enjoyed sitting in with us too. I learned so much about the Japanese American and Hawaiian people in World War II, and Alton's thoughts about story and healing were so insightful. If you enjoyed listening to this podcast, be sure to check out other episodes. And if you think I should interview a certain folk and fairy tale, myths and legends storyteller, send me an email. You can find me and my work on Facebook, Simon Brooks Storyteller, and on my website, simonbrooksstoryteller.com, and on Instagram, Simon M. Brooks. Oh, Diamond Street? Yep, that's me, the English fella and storyteller. A shout out to Chris Jedd for creating and recording and letting me use the wonderful music for my podcast. His band is called Blackpool Mecca. Check it out, and they have a new album coming out soon. Thanks for being here.
It's just a story.